What's up everyone, my name is Jonathan Munoz and I will be your instructor for this course. The purpose of this course is to emphasize the importance of learning your DAW, and in this case Cubase. Technology has never been more integrated with our lives than it is today, and learning how to navigate, troubleshoot, and leverage the tools at our disposal is crucial for the longevity of an artist's career. I'm glad you chose me to help you reach that goal and take your technical skills up to the next level. Some of the things that will be learned in this course are learning the interface of Cubase, navigation tools, personalization of the Cubase interface, location of all the helpful tools available to you, how to use the given tools, and so much more. If you have your copy of Cubase ready to go, feel free to follow along and take some notes. Let's get started, and I'll see you guys in Unit 1. All right, welcome to Unit 1 of this course. And in this course, I'm going to show you how to set up your hardware and a little bit of the introduction into Cubase. Now, Cubase has 5 different versions, but in this course, we're going to be focused only on one of them, and it is the highest version that they have, which is Cubase Pro. Now, the reason, of course, why I'm using Cubase Pro is because it has all of the features that we're going to talk about, and especially those advanced features that are really going to help your workflow. So for example, if you go to this URL here, you can go to steinberg.net/compare-additions/. It's going to take you to this page where you can compare all 5 versions of Cubase. So just to address some of the features that we are going to be using and things that are going to be taught in this course is if we go to highlights and then we scroll down to things like Vary Audio. So only the Pro version, the one right before, has it. But Control Room is something very powerful in Cubase and only the Pro version has it. Advanced Audio Export is another very important one. If I go down to general, things like the Profile Manager. Profile Manager is down here. So if I go to Profiles, only Cubase Pro has it. And then again, Advanced Audio Export. So those are just a few of the things that we're going to be talking about inside of this course on Cubase Pro. And it's very, very important that if you want to follow along and absorb and use all of these tips and advices that I'm going to give you throughout the course to get your version of Cubase Pro. Of course, if you do not have Cubase Pro and you have a different version and you still want to follow along, you are free to do so. But just note that some of the elements won't be inside of your version of Cubase unless you're using the Pro version. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the audio interface. So here I have a PDF that's showing you an audio interface and what it does. So essentially it just converts your instrument or microphone signal into something that your computer can read and obviously you can hear. And you can output your signal to speakers, a pair of monitors that you purchased, your studio monitors, or you can use headphones, things like that. So you have the Focusrite 2i2, which is a very popular choice for an audio interface. And then we have the Apollo Twin X, which is another very popular interface. So in the back, of course, we have the outputs. We have the connection to the computer, which is the USB-C to computer. In the Apollo, though, it does have the 2 mic and line inputs in the back as well. And then we have the monitor, the line out, and then the USB-C to the computer. If we look at the front side, here we have the mic and line inputs for the Focusrite 2i2. The gain knob, if you're using phantom power. This is the output volume, so you can control it here. This is headphone volume. This is where you plug in your headphones. Direct monitoring, or just another way of saying real-time monitoring. If this is on, you can hear the incoming signal without having to press record inside of your DAW. So that's pretty cool that it has that in here. And then you have things like mic line switcher. Just one thing to know, if you do not know this, most microphones need to have phantom power in it, except for dynamic microphones. Same thing for the Apollo. So here we have the headphone input. Here we have a high Z input. So this is especially useful for guitar players, bass players, where it converts your signal to a higher impedance. That's what high Z stands for. Therefore, your guitar or bass would have the full frequency spectrum when you are recording into your DAW. Here we have the preamp button, here we have the volume button, and then this little button right here, it's multifunctional, but here you could turn on the phantom power for the Apollo as well. So this is just a brief overview of what an audio interface is. You probably know what it is and how it works already, but just in case you didn't know, well, this is an example of what an audio interface does and how you use it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open up Cubase and we're going to see where we do our basic connections so that we can hear things coming out of our audio interface. So here we have the Steinberg hub, and now what we're going to do is we're just going to create an empty project. We're going to go here to the default location, and I already have this set up. You could just set up a path, set up a project folder. We'll go more in depth on the Steinberg hub in the next unit, and all we're going to do is we're just going to create an empty session. So here I have my Cubase session. Let me just go ahead and turn this off. And now what we're going to do is we are going to set up our outputs and to make sure that everything is working inside of the DAW. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go up to Studio, and we're going to go down to where it says Studio Setup. Now when you open the Studio Setup window, while the audio system is highlighted, whether you have a Focusrite 2i2 or an Apollo Twin X, which is universal audio, or if you have M Audio, if you have PreSonus, any of those interfaces, you're going to go to this drop down menu and you're going to get a list of drivers that Cubase is recognizing is your audio interface. So you're just going to go ahead and click on it. Now, if you want to check things like your buffer settings, you can go and click on your unit and then go here to where it says Control Panel. Here, you're able to raise the buffer size or lower the buffer size. Keep in mind that if you lower the buffer size, it's more taxing on your CPU, but you're going to get the least amount of latency. And the higher your buffer size is, the less amount of CPU you're going to use, but the more latency you're going to get in your live recording. So here you would want to play around, especially when you are recording live, and when you're doing mixing and stuff, you probably want it to be a little bit higher so that you can use more of your computer resources for plugins for mixing. So we're going to go ahead and close this. And now to make sure that we have signal, we're going to go over here to where it says Studio, and then we're going to go to where it says Audio Connection. Now in the audio connection, you're going to find the tab that says Input on the top left here, and you're just going to go ahead and open up this drop down menu, and then you're just going to select your left and your right. And then the output section, same thing. You're going to open up this drop down menu, and then you're going to do left and right. You'll notice that mine does not say left and right here, and later in the course, we're going to be talking about control room, which is where my left and right outputs are set up, but we'll get to that in a later unit. So now to finally check if we have some signal going into it, let's say you have a guitar available or you have your microphone. In this case, since I'm using my microphone, I'm going to go up to Studio and go and open the mix console. So here in the stereo in, it seems that I have signal and my microphone is working, which is exactly how you are listening to me right now. So I have set up this audio interface properly, and now we are ready to move on to Unit 2. Hello and welcome back to Unit 2 of this course. In this unit, we're going to be talking about learning the interface of Cubase. So the first thing I want to bring to your attention is the Steinberg hub. Now the hub is the first thing you're going to see when you first download Cubase, and it's essentially where you're going to lay out or how you're going to set up your projects. Now on the right side here, you're going to see a couple different options like recording, where they give you some presets on some things that they consider are useful for a recording session. And you could just go ahead and scroll down here. We have things like scoring. So if you do film composition, they have a couple of presets for that laid out for you. You have things like production, which again, they have these presets already laid out for you. And then you have mastering, and then you have more. So the more is where you're going to save your templates, and we'll get to that in a later lesson of this course. The Recents tab is just going to be the projects that you were most recently working on, so they're going to be saved there for quick access. On the left side, you're going to get the news and tutorial section, so anything that's new with Steinberg, they're going to update you on this left side portion. Below that, we have things like deals, so you can see what kind of deals they're having. The user manual, forums, and the support button is going to be on this hub as well. On the bottom corner, we're going to see where we can set up our project. So if you use a default location and you click this little box here, you can choose the path where you want to save this. So for example, I chose that this project is going to be saved on my desktop. Here you get to choose the name of the project file. Since Cubase uses a folder structure to keep all of your projects in there, you're going to see an audio folder, you're going to see mixdown folders for your bounces, you're going to see things like the actual project files, and even backups that Cubase does on a timely basis depending on your preferences, which we will get into in a later lesson in this course. So in the very bottom, we have three buttons. We have the Open Other, which is you open up a project from your external hard drive or your internal hard drive on your computer, and you can open it through here. You can cancel the hub, and you can also create the project. So if we choose default location, this will take you right into a Cubase project. If you go for prompt for location, it's going to create the project, but first is going to prompt you with where you want to set the path and what you want to call it. So I already have a project open, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel this window. So this is Cubase. It might look a little bit different than the version you are opening, and that's because I've already messed around with some of the preferences, and I changed some of the color schemes in Cubase based on my liking. And again, we'll talk about all of that stuff later on in this course, how you can change color schemes using the preference settings inside of Cubase. So now we're going to go into Cubase, and we're going to review the interface and all the different parts that we have inside of the main screen when you open up Cubase. It could be a little intimidating, but I'm gonna go ahead and break it down, and we're gonna start with the location of the toolbars and transport functions we have on Cubase. So we're gonna start from left to right. So in the top left corner, you're gonna see I have two undo and redo buttons. So it's like the same as doing Command Z or Command Shift Z to redo something. Right next to that, I have configuration settings. So for visibility stuff, if I want to hide tracks or I want to see a particular group of tracks, I can go ahead and configure it here. We'll get more into this as we go through the course. We have also other filter sections. So if I open up this, you're going to see that I have options on how I want to see my tracks with data, tracks with the cursor position, and locators. And we'll get more in depth with all of these functions as we move through the course. We have track types where we can filter out different tracks. We have the master control for mute, solo, read, write automation, suspend all automation. So we have auto scroll. So if the track is playing, Cubase will automatically start moving according to the cursor position. So if you take this off, it won't move. If you have it on, it will. Here we have the main toolbar. So it's going to show you the pointer tool, range selection, pencil, eraser, scissors, the glue tool, the mute button, a zoom function, the comp button, time warp, line tool, the playback button, and then we have the color bucket so you can color your project. Right next to that, we have the color palette. We have the snap to zero crossing button. We have grids for quantization. So if you want to snap on to particular bars and beats inside of the project window, the kind of quantization, the value of the quantization, a couple of audio quantization stuff as well. And we have things like metering. So if you want to see how your processing level, your CPU level, your disk cache, you can all see it in this little meter here. And then you have your left, bottom, and right zones that you can open and close on command up here. This toolbar section can be customized. So if you click on this gear sign on the right, you can customize it to whatever it is that you want to see at any given point. So I could take off things like, let's say I don't want to see my quantizing stuff. I can take it out and I can leave it out of my toolbar. But what if I do want to see it, then I could just pull it right back up. So Cubase is very customizable in that sense. If we go to the bottom section here, we can see things like our audio inputs. I have it connected with my interface. My audio outputs, I have it connected. My max record time is 859 hours. Very good to know how much time I have in this project to record, depending on disk space and other factors. The kind of recording format I'm using. So I'm using 4824, which is film standard. And this project right now is frame rate 23.98. Of course, I don't have video here, so it really doesn't matter what frame rate I am on now. But if I'm working on film, then that's definitely something that I would want to know at any given point what frame rate this movie or TV show is at. And then I also see things like the project pan law, which I have it at equal power. And then right below it, if I have an instrument, you're going to see other information pop up here, but we'll get to that in just a second. Let's go down to the bottom toolbar. So we have another toolbar to look at, but here's where I have my transport functions and things like what bars and my time code, my tempo, time signature, and metronome stuff. And then here I also have like my input metering. So I could see different inputs that are moving. As you can see, I have one moving here. And you could see activity, MIDI activity stuff here. You can catch maybe overloads and input. All of that I can catch down here. And again, this is all highly customizable. So I can click this little gear sign here. And you're going to see that I can activate and deactivate certain things depending on what I like to see in my project. So now let's go ahead and create a track so we can see what this other section here is. And I'm going to create a track by I right clicked on this empty space here, or you can hit this plus sign and we're going to go ahead and create a track. So I'm just going to go ahead and right click here, hit add instrument, and you're going to get prompted with this. You can choose any instrument you want. And for now, we'll just choose contact. We're not going to do any music stuff because, again, this is a tech course. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up contact. And here we have the instrument. So now I'm just going to go ahead and close this window, and I'm going to create a region. So I'm right-clicking inside of this project window here. So anywhere inside this dark grayish area, I'm right-clicking, which is essentially the same toolbar you see up here, but this time I don't need to travel all the way up here. I can just have it appear right next to my mouse. And now I'm going to go ahead and choose the tool I want to use. So I'm going to create a region. So I'm going to use the pencil tool here. Again, we're going to get a little bit into how to use these tools, and I'm going to show you examples of why you would want to use them and how you would use them. This would be a great example to see what tools you would like to use or what tools are the most useful, in my opinion, for people who are doing production work, and it can help you guys speed up the workflow as well. So I'm going to use the pencil tool here to create a region. And I'm just going to go ahead and just make a region up to measure 5. And then once I do that, notice how the part that said no object selected, I can now click on this and you're going to see some things come out here. So here it gives you the name of the actual region, which is contact 1. And I can always rename it here. We have information also of the start time. So we're starting on bar 1, beat 1, where it ends. So this is bar 5, beat 1. The length of it, it's 4 bars long, because if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, this is 4 measures right here. The offset, there is no offset here. And we could see if it's muted, which we can mute just like this. So you could do things also like locking the region. So I can lock it by position. So if I have it locked and I try to move it, it's never going to move out of place. So again, really handy tool there. Next, we have a transpose function. So what transposing is, it's like grabbing a note. Let's say you're starting on C and I move it up 1. Let's say I do 1, positive 1. I'm going to move that C up to a C sharp on my keyboard. So if you're looking at a keyboard, it's like going from a white key to the black key, and that's how we get the transpose functions. The transpose function works in half steps. So it's think of looking at a piano, it's every single key going up or going down, because you can also go negative numbers. So next to that, we have the global transpose. I would leave it in follow. And using this velocity control, I can move this up and down and globally change all of the velocities inside of this region by however much I move it up or down. And then to the right of that, I have root key. So now let's go over some of the tools here. So here we have the pointer tool, which essentially is what you're most likely going to be using when you're in the DAW. You're going to be using the pointer tool to highlight. You can highlight things like this by just clicking and dragging. You can drag the region out like this. You can do loops by holding this one and just kind of repeating it, and it tells you how many times you're going to repeat the region. Let's undo that, pressing this button up here. We have things like the region tool. So this tool is essentially what I did with the pointer tool, except it's only designed to highlight regions like this. Now the cool thing is that this works with the quantize feature that we have up here. So I'm saying that every beat, if I zoom in a little bit with the zoom in bar right here, just like this, and I can also zoom in vertically like this by clicking this button on the two buttons right here. These two sliders control the zoom. If I press G and H on my keyboard, it's going to zoom in and out horizontally. If I hold Shift and press G and H, it's going to move vertically. So I can also do this on the keyboard instead of reaching for it down here with the mouse. So right now I have my quantize set to beats. So notice how when I grab a region, it's going to hit not only the measure lines, but every little line in between it, because I have my quantize set to beats. If I move this to bar, then I'm no longer going to have that. I'm just going to have the entire bar get highlighted like this. So this tool is mainly just to select the regions. If I go to here and I choose use the quantize, so the quantize that I'm going to use is now this value right here. So these are quarter notes. So you're going to see that if I zoom in a little bit more, it's going to grab now even these little lines, because these are what we call 16th notes. If I want it to get a little bit more, you're going to see the lines change. Now I have half a beat of each measure, which is an eighth note. And then I can also change it to quarter notes, kind of like doing it if I was on beat mode here. So the next tool we're going to look at is the pencil tool, which you saw what I did, which is creating regions or creating MIDI notes, which we'll get into in the next unit of this course. But in the project window, the pencil tool is very great to draw just objects like this, where I can create a region, and now I can go ahead and use or play my MIDI notes in here. The next tool we have next to that is the eraser tool. So of course, what you would expect, this region would be erased if I click on it, just like that. The next one we have is the scissor tool. So if I grab the pencil tool, and let's say, let me actually change the quantize so that it lands on the bars here. And I do this one to measure 9. And let's say measure 5, I want to chop that because I want those to be separate regions. I go like that with the scissor tool, and notice how I chopped it up here. And let's say I want to make 4 equal parts here. If I grab the scissor tool, depending on where the cursor is, it's landing on 7, click here, landing on 3, click here. Now I have 4 even sections of this region here. The next tool we're going to talk about is the glue tool. So let's say you, by mistake, cut out something you weren't supposed to. Well, with the glue tool, you can go to the previous region and glue it, because it glues from the previous to the next one. So if I glue here, nothing is going to happen if I click on this one. But if I click on the one right before it, it'll glue everything after it. So there you go. I glued the one in front of it. So you always have to click on the previous one. So in this case, the left one is going to glue to this one here, and then this whole thing is going to glue to this one here. So if I click it once, it glued the one right in front of it, and now if I click it again, it just glued the entire thing together. So it's always going to glue whatever is right next to it, not the entire region. Unless, let me go ahead and chop it again. Unless I go here and I select them all, and then I press glue, then it will glue the entire section. But if you do it one by one without selecting them all, then it's only going to glue the one right next to it to the right. The next tool we have is the mute tool. So the mute tool is going to shut off this MIDI region or audio, and it's going to disable it so that it's not heard when you're on playback mode. And playback mode is just when you press play, that the cursor starts moving, and it passes it, it won't play it because it's not active. It turns white like this. So if I want it to be unmuted again, I'm just going to go back to the mute tool, and I'm going to click on the region, and now it's active again. You know it's active when it takes the color of the track that you're using. And of course, mine came out purple. Yours is probably going to come out gray because we haven't touched on the preferences that allow you to change the color for these. But we'll get to that in a later lesson. The next tool we have is the zoom tool. So this tool is just, you could choose a region, highlight a region. If you let it go, it's just going to zoom into it. Let's say I just want this little space here. It's going to zoom into that little space. But of course, we have the option to do on our keyboard G and H to zoom out, like I'm doing right now, pressing G. So the next tool we're going to talk about is the comp tool. So the comp tool is essentially something to help you move these regions around so you can stretch them out like this. Oh, you got to click on the bottom, make stretch them out like this in the region, or you can move them left and right if you have other takes that you want to put on top of this. So let's say I draw another region here and I use the comp tool. It's just, again, another way to move these regions around. You could do this like this and stretch it out, and it's just focus on that. So the next tool we're going to talk about is the time warp tool. So let's zoom in a little bit here. And let's say there's an important part of a film and it lands right here on beat 4 of measure 20. So the best way to show you this example is if I pull up a tempo track, which I'll go over the track types as we move forward in this course. But let's say we have this tempo track. I need to anchor it somewhere so that the time warp tool can work effectively. So I'm going to go ahead and create a point, and let's say I want it to be right on measure 20. Oh, let's put a measure 20 right there. And I want to move this down because I still want it to be at 120. And now I want 21 to land on beat 3 here. Watch what happens when I grab the time warp tool and I make this 21 scoot over here because that's where I want the sync point. Now you can see that the tempo change, has increased. So Cubase did all the calculations to make sure that this beat, so any time code position, let's say 38.11 was the time code position I wanted this to hit. Now it's hit because I moved this 21 over to the left, which means that now this section here had to speed up in order for measure 21 to hit 1003811. So the next tool that we have, let me just go ahead and undo all of this. and just bring back our region, just one region here. And I will delete this, this, and this. So now let's say we want to create MIDI notes that have some sort of a line or some sort of a shape. And we want a line tool to help us to do that. So this line tool is effective inside of the piano roll, which is this guy here. If you double click on the region, you're gonna open up the bottom section. So notice how the bottom section is highlighted here. And we go into the piano roll. Now when we open up the piano roll and we zoom in, you're gonna see that we now have this line tool. So you can change the line shape with whatever you want, a parabola, sine, triangle, square. And then we have paint, which allows you to freely move the mouse and create different lines. In the piano roll with this line tool, let's say I want to create a note. I know that I want it to go from C, but in measure 4, I want it to jump to another C. I'm going to grab this line tool and say approximately from here to here, calculate the notes I need to play. And notice how here it now autofills for me what notes I need to play in order for me to reach the C on measure 4. And it does all of the calculations for me and autofills the notes for me. So now all I need to do is go right back in. Sorry, I'm trying to find this. It's moving really quick. Let me just anchor a point here. So now we have the notes here shown in the shape that I chose for it. So again, let me show you in the next measure. Let's say in this next measure, I wanted to go from measure 4 down here all the way up to F on the next measure. It approximates what line or shape that I was using here. If I undo and let's say I choose a parabola, which is this exponential curve, you're going to see that the notes conform to this. So it has this sort of shape to it. And again, you could choose whatever line you want and it'll go ahead and conform that shape for you. So another interesting thing we could look at with the line tool is that it can also help you create nice curves when you're using things like MIDI CC. So if you have sample libraries like string libraries, for example, that rely on MIDI CC data to control dynamics, we can go ahead and go to the plus sign down here. And let me just go ahead and remove this one so you can see how I create this. You're going to hit the plus sign, and then you're going to go to either modulation or expression, which is usually the MIDI CC numbers we use in sample libraries. And we could click on one, and this line tool can help you create these shapes as well. So if I create a parabola here, and I go and I say up to measure 5, I want this ramp, it'll go ahead and create these MIDI CC points for you. Same thing with any other line that we use. So if I just go ahead and change this, let's say to a line tool, I can get a straight ramp all the way up to 5, and you can create this naturally using the line tool. The line tool is also effective to create things like automation. So if you want to automate, let's say, volume inside of a project, the way we find that menu is if we go into the instrument and then we go down here to this little button that only appears when you hover over the left bottom section of the instrument track. And if you click this, you're going to reveal the automation data. So you can automate things like volume. You can choose whatever you want to automate by clicking on where it says volume. You can also add more lanes to this. So if we actually click again down here in the bottom left, you can continue to add as many automation tracks as you need for this instrument track. So let's go ahead and collapse them. So in order to collapse them, we go up here to the top left and there's this minus button. We're going to go ahead and click on these and just show you how you can create the lines, not only for creating notes in the piano roll or MIDI CC data, but we can also create automation data as well. So if I grab my line tool and do a straight line going, let's say all the way to 4, I am now going to create a ramp inside of the automation data as well. So the next tool we're going to see is the playback tool. So let's say this region had musical information in it and I want to hear the playback of it. So if I go ahead and just zoom out a little bit, you're going to see that if I press and hold the speaker tool over this region, you're going to see a playback happen. Now, it depends on where you put your mouse is where it's going to play back. So if I put my mouse on measure 8 here, it's going to start playing from measure 8. If I go to 4, it's going to start playing from measure 4. If I go to 3, it's going to start playing from measure 3. And it gives you a little bit of pre-roll, so that's cool. So it's not going to click exactly where I have the mouse. It's going to go a little before it so that you can hear the entrance of whatever it is that you want to hear. And then the next tool is going to be the color tool. So the color tool allows you to choose a color and essentially change it. So let's say I open up a new track, right click, choose another contact instrument, and I color this track. Let's say I want it to be yellow. Oh, well, I had this one highlighted, so that's why I changed yellow. But now let's say I want to create another track here. Here I have a yellow track, and here I have a purple track. If I go here and click on this purple track, it's going to turn yellow as well because I already have it in my color palette. I had chosen it already. Now let's say I want it to be green, but I want to copy a color and move it to the next one. If I hold Option on my keyboard, you're going to see a little drip tool. If I click on the yellow one, you're going to see that up here it turns to yellow. If I click here, it's going to turn green. So whatever color I have up here is the color that the bucket is going to put on the region. So now this is going to turn green as well. If I undo and do it backwards, use the drip tool, yellow, and now this one turns yellow. So that's how you use the color bucket up here. You also have, as I showed you, a color palette. So you probably won't see it like this, but I'm going to show you how you can change this so that you can see names instead of just colors, and how you can name each color according to whatever tracks that you're working with. So I have this very organized, again, for faster workflow and for less time searching for colors. I already have them color coded and named for me. So moving along, we're going to go into the quantize section here, and that's exactly what we were playing around when we were talking about the range tool here. We can use the quantize tool to essentially choose how we're going to move our ranges. So if I choose, let's say, events are markers. If I choose shuffle is an interesting feature because what it does is that it automatically sticks whatever you put on the right side to the left. So let's say I open up a region here with the pencil tool, and I want to create another region to the right of it and say it goes here. Notice how it didn't move. But in shuffle mode, it automatically snaps it to whatever's to the left. If I draw a line here, it's going to go right back and snap to whatever it is to the left. Also, if I'm in shuffle mode, if I delete regions and I hit delete, the one to the right would still shift over to the left. This is a great mode to use, especially if you're doing editing that you are 100% sure that you want things to conform to a certain place if you delete a spot. So when you would use this tool as, let's say, a film, a director gives you a film, they took out a piece of picture and they say, I want a clean cut here. This is a great tool to use because now if, let's say, the clean cut was measure 2 and we know that measure 3 music comes in, we can use the shuffle tool, just hit delete, and it automatically shifts over. That's enough of shuffle mode. Let's go back into grid mode because it's probably the mode that you're going to be using the most. Grid mode, and then here you could choose how you want things to snap on. So if I move my cursor, it doesn't matter if I'm in the middle here, it's always going to snap onto bars. Here is always going to snap onto the beats inside of the bars. And then here we use the quantize, and then you also have adapt to zoom. So depending on your zoom level, if it's far out here, then you're only going to snap onto the lines that you do see. If you are zoomed in more, you're going to snap onto the lines that you do see. So even these little ones. So that's what adapt to zoom is. So that was the example on how you use the toolbar inside of Cubase so you can effectively use these tools to help you continue creating and help speed up your workflow, however that may be. Now we're going to jump down to the transport section. So the transport section has a couple of things that you need to worry about. This is highly customizable, so it really just depends on what you need and what you want to use. So for now, I have the most essential things that you'll probably be using when you first start up Cubase. So the first thing is your transport functions, things in the cursor for playback purposes. So let's say I want to go back to the beginning. This is the button I press. If I want to go all the way to the right, that's the button I press. And it's always going to go to whatever event is on the track at the moment. So right now, notice how I went left. And the only thing that's to the left is my beginning. And if I move to the right, the last event that I have here is going to be right here. So here I have a scrub tool. So if I want to scrub through the music, I can use this tool to kind of just move around slowly. Again, this is what we call scrubbing through the tracks. So you can do it like this. You can create cycle, activate the cycle marker. So we'll talk about this tool a little later in the lesson, but this is the cycle tool, and if it's purple, that means it's on, meaning that it's going to cycle between this -1 all the way up to this bar or this beat in measure 12. If I turn it off, it's just going to be grayed out. We have our play button, stop button, and record button, which you should be familiar with these already. The next thing we have to the right is the time display for beats. So notice how I'm on measure 6 right now. It's saying I'm on beat 2, measure 6, beat 2, and then the first 16th note in beat 2, and then ticks. And then we have things like time codes. So if you're working with film, you could see what time position you're in. Depending on the film, you sync it to the picture. So next I have the tempo, which I can move up and down, which is the speed of the tracks. And then I have my time signature here. I also have metronome settings. So if I want to hear the metronome as I'm playing, I could click this on or press C on my keyboard and then press play. You should hear the click here. So next we have how to edit some of these metronome sounds. So we could change the sound here, click patterns, general settings here, and that's essentially how you use the metronome. And one final thing before we wrap up this section is these little 3 dots that we see here are expandable. So anytime you're using any of these transport functions, if you want to see a more expansive version of whatever it is that you're using down here, like let's say the transport function, I can click on these 3 dots and I can actually condense it into 4 little buttons. So if I don't want to see the scrub tool or any of those tools because I don't use them, then the 4 main buttons can stay down here, which is the cycle marker, the stop, play, and the record button. If I do want to see it, I can either click on it or I can click and drag so that I can expand it further. So that's pretty much it for this unit. This was learning the interface of Cubase. These are going to be the tools that you're going to be exposed to on a daily if you're using Cubase as your main DAW. So it's very important what these tools do, how to use them, and how to incorporate them into your workflow. I will say my goodbyes for now, but I will see you in unit number 3, which is going to be talking about the bottom divider inside of Cubase, which holds the piano roll, chord editor, audio editor, and score editor. I'll see you guys soon.